Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me as a couples therapist to react to this TV show called 90 Day Fiancé Before the 90 Days, in which we follow Darcey's story in particular. So let's see what happens.
Hi. Oh my God. Hi.
So, as with last time, when I saw Darcey meeting Jesse for the first time, well, I guess in contrast to last time I saw all this potential and it was great, and I had a lot of warm feelings seeing these two people in love and seeing each other for the first time. I have to say, when I see this, I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen between these two? Because given everything we've been seeing so far, we don't see any indication of things potentially being different, and we see some indication that things are going to be the same. So when I see stuff like this, there's a part of me that's like, oh good, love and affection and warmth and romance, and another part of me is like, oh God, is this another train wreck waiting to happen?
Don't ever want to feel like chipped away at.
You don't have to.
And I think a lot of women in this world need that confidence and that voice, that they aren't good enough. You've actually helped me heal and realize what I don't want. Like, you just pulling out a chair or like dote over me, like that was very special. You didn't have to do that.
I hope you don't feel like this every time I do something nice.
I don't want to read into the early interactions between these two people. There's obviously a lot of awkwardness. This is their first date, essentially. There's all these cameras on them. They're getting to know each other in person. And so I don't want to read in too much into it, but there are some yellow flags here of some issues, some cultural differences maybe. For Darcey, she comes from a culture or an understanding that it's okay, which is functional, to emote and to show your vulnerability. And for Tom, I've heard anyway that people in England can be quite subdued in their emotions. Probably there's pros and cons to that we can identify. A good portion of my heritage comes from the British Isles, so I certainly know what that is like. There's pros and cons to that, probably more cons than pros, honestly. And they're running into a cultural difference right now where Tom might be looking at this behavior in Darcey. She's being vulnerable, which is perfectly fine, as like a problem, like every time I'm going to be nice to you, are you going to break down? There's a criticism in there. There's a put down in there. What we would like to have seen maybe would be for Tom to reach out to her, hug her, just be there with her, let her cry. It's fine. It might not be what you're accustomed to, but there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to people crying. And, just be there. You don't have to fix the problem. You don't have to worry about it. Tears are fine. And what a wonderful opportunity for there to be some warmth between the two of you. But instead, Tom is very standoffish and puts her down. Now, some could say that, look, this is first date stuff, and this is a little overwhelming for someone, and I'm not your therapist, and how about reeling that in? That's not my lifestyle, not my culture, but we could see how one could say such a thing, I suppose. But at the very least, you would like to see Tom reach out to her and take care of her. So total yellow flags here. And obviously I can't diagnose from afar, because basically what we're being, shown on this reality TV show is a very small snippet, and it's being edited by editors. So whenever I comment on these people, you could almost consider it me commenting on Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, because it's largely a fictional account of human beings. And if I was able to actually sit down with these individuals, I'm guessing I would have a much different idea of who they were. So just keep that in mind as I comment on these kinds of things. As this channel gets more and more popular, some of you are actually sharing this stuff with these people, and they're watching it. And if you're one of the people in these, if Darcey's watching or Tom is watching, I just want you to be clear that I don't presume to understand your full personality at all. I only kind of understand what the producers are trying to tell us. Anyway, some yellow flags here. That for Tom, he has some withdrawn defenses around vulnerability. Tom, like anyone else, very likely has a desire to connect with other people, And like anyone else, he is afraid of being hurt and afraid of being ashamed and being afraid of being shamed by other people. And there are many different ways to cope with that. For Darcey, her way of coping with that is to really lean in and to really grasp for other people to try to pull them into her life. And so she's a pursuer. For Tom, he's exhibiting right now anyway some yellow flags of some distancing behavior. So the pursuer-distancer dynamic. Both positions are defenses. There's almost always that dynamic in every romantic relationship where if you ask any couple, like, who's the pursuer, who's the distancer, you will find that people will be able to identify that. So there's total normalcy to that, but if taken to a certain extreme, it can become a problem, right? Also, we're seeing Tom in his behavior towards her. He's kind of awkward, I would say, in a minor way. I don't know if it's just the music they're playing along with it that influences me, but I'm wondering how confident he is, or how much shame he's been through, how much trauma he's been through, how much hurt he's been through that informs this moment for him. We might, if we're looking at a very similar pattern in this relationship as we did with Jesse and Darcey, the difference that there might be similar themes of misunderstanding and triggering each other and hostility and accusation. But it could look a little different because of not only the culture or the upbringing that Tom went through, but also the way that he copes with things or the amount of traumas that he went through. In that for him, he might have a different form of avoidant attachment style and a different form of minor narcissism spectrum. I obviously can't diagnose, but that there's some yellow flags there, and I guess I'll comment on that as we see more data come out. By the way, subscribe and hit the bell below, because then you'll get notifications every time. And for those of you who have already subscribed, that's great. I hear that YouTube sends creators, YouTube channels, a little plaque if you get 100,000 subscribers, and we are getting close to that. At least that was the rumor. Maybe it's 1 million. I don't know, but it'd be kind of fun to get a little plaque in the mail from YouTube. I don't know what I'd do with it, but also, as I always say, this sort of stuff is not a substitute for therapy. So you deserve therapy, and if you have been disheartened by therapy in your area, I encourage you to pursue and shop around a little bit more. Try out 5-10 therapists. Usually there's one in that set that will be a good fit for you. And also become a patron on Patreon if you can. That's the best way we know that you like what we're doing. And the more patrons become patrons on Patreon, the more time I can spend on stuff like this. All right, let's get back to the show.
Darcey is a very emotional person. It's something I'm not used to. It's something that I don't particularly find attractive. You know, it's supposed to be like first date scenario. It's supposed to be fun. Come on.
He's exhibiting that he's not used to it, which points towards a cultural pocket that doesn't value that sort of thing. Again, there's pros and cons to that. A lot of cons, I'm here to tell you. And also an expectation that a first date wouldn't have this sort of thing. Now, for Darcey, she comes at this from a different angle. She probably doesn't perceive this as a first date. She perceives this as like date 50, because all the chatting over texting and FaceTiming that they've had, she might consider to be a lot of involvement with each other. For him, this is a first date, so that's okay. Both perspectives are fine, but I hope that they can take care of each other through that difference.
Do you want to see the rest of the house?
Okay.
Come here. Stop it.
Okay, so that's good. Good job, Tom. Reach out, hug her. That's probably all she wants you to do. You don't have to do anything beyond that. You don't have to fix her problems. You don't have to distract her. Just hug her. That's great. I want to commend that. I want to point out positives when I see it, and that's definitely a huge positive.
I feel it's like a little missing something.
Yeah.
Where's your room? Let me see.
Come on, we're upstairs. It's this way.
We might switch.
Come on. We might switch.
We might have to switch. I'm not... It's feeling cold. You got the master.
No, look at my bed.
I like it better.
Okay, so she seems a little intoxicated. That they've certainly shown her drinking a fair amount of drinks, and she seems a little intoxicated. There's nothing wrong with being intoxicated. Some people have been emailing me saying, how come I'm not commenting? This was in the Love is Blind stuff with Jessica. There's nothing wrong with people drinking, by the way. It certainly has its pros and its cons, right, that everyone has to evaluate. She's intoxicated. And when you're in a vulnerable space and her and Tom don't really have a routine about how to work out emotional ups and downs, this raises the risk of something happening. Because when you're intoxicated, your brain dysfunctions essentially, and it's harder to modulate your emotions and figure out what to do in an emotional space. So I'm a little worried about what's happening. Darcey seems to be saying that she wants to have sex with him tonight. She wants to connect with him, and she holds a lot of value in that. She says, I want to be treated like a queen. I want to be treated like I'm a desired object. I don't want him to just not at least pursue me in this first night as if he's, passionate about me and my body. And for Tom, he sees it completely differently. He's trying to be what he considers to be a gentleman, which is his effort of trying to show her that he cares about her by not jumping her bones when they first see each other. So they have a difference on that, and that's fine. But I worry that that difference matched up with the intoxication, matched up with Tom's sort of withdrawn style of connecting with people, that this will potentially blow up. Hopefully it won't.
This is my room. I like it. I don't know, I like the coziness of this room. It has good energy. One down there had weird energy.
Do you want to sleep here and I sleep downstairs? Is that...
No, I just don't really feel comfortable sleeping alone.
Okay, so she's asking that she wants to sleep with him, either sleep or sleep with him. And nothing wrong with that. You can make that request. There's also a perfectly valid request from Tom, which is, I don't feel comfortable sleeping with you yet. We just met in person today, and I want to take it slow. Now, gender plays an issue in here of, like, when a man draws a boundary like that, it's seen as, culturally, sometimes it's seen as some evidence that he's not a real man, or he doesn't really love her, isn't really attracted to her, because there's this assumption that men are just, walking sexual hormones, which is not true. We've certainly been told that, and we've certainly been taught to expect that, but I'm here to tell you, as a person who talks to a lot of people and about their actual impulses and actual lives, there's a wide variety of sexuality and libido among all genders. I hope that Darcey can kind of see through that. She seems rather intoxicated, and she seems to kind of be digging herself into a hole right now, which isn't promising. So both people can have their wants. Both people can have their preferences here. She wants to sleep with him. He doesn't. So hopefully they can navigate that in a way that is taking care of each other while asserting your own feelings and needs.
I can stay with you.
I just don't feel comfortable sleeping down there alone.
Then you don't have to be upset. I'll sleep with you.
Just cuddle.
Yeah. You have to put up with my very English pajamas, but...
That's fine.
Nothing wrong with her tearing up a little bit. We shouldn't be afraid of tears and emotion. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's fine. Tom seems to be reacting well to it. And he's like, okay, we can just cuddle. That's fine. It seems like you really need that. I wonder what's going on for Darcey in this moment. This seems to be something happening with her. Because at home, she presumably sleeps by herself. I don't know that for sure, but I would think that's possible. And so she's used to sleeping by herself. Now, is it something about being in another town? Is it some kind of validation that she's really looking for, and she's really caught between a rock and a hard place here? She doesn't want to be pushy, but at the same time, she knows she's going to feel really rejected if she's sleeping by herself. I wish I knew what was going on for her underneath the surface.
You can stay here with me. I kind of felt like I was babysitting a little at this point. Been so excited to get her here, and then now she's so upset, and I don't know how to deal with that. But it's something I'm willing to work.
Tom, what's up with the glasses of wine? Like, a big factor in the fact that this is spiraling downward for Darcey is the fact that she's drank so much up until this point. I'm guessing she didn't need the extra glass of wine that you gave her when you first got to the Airbnb. She probably doesn't need this glass of wine too. I mean, if you want to throw fuel on the fire, this is the way to go, Tom.
But if it continues like this, then it's not going to be the romantic getaway that I thought it might be. You want to go to sleep? Yeah? I don't mind.
I just want to know I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
Okay, so maybe this is what we didn't see in season 1 with Jesse, that one night when they had to fight where Jesse was saying that she overdrank and they had this big emotional ordeal, and the cameras weren't filming that part. I think I speculated back then. We're getting some more data here. It's hard to know, but I've certainly seen this in other people where they've been traumatized relationally, maybe even traumatized sexually, maybe even traumatized physically, various different traumas. And when they drink, there's a lot of defense mechanisms and a lot of cognitive processes that go into subduing or suppressing the emotions, the overwhelming emotions that are coming forth because of what happened. So I'll just talk about people that I've known before. So say you have a girl who is neglected growing up, mistreated by her parents growing up. Then she is sexually abused as a teen, and she has all these compounding traumas. And then she's an adult, and there's all this unresolved grief, all this unresolved trauma, actual PTSD, reactivity to things, complex PTSD, borderline spectrum, this kind of thing, preoccupied attachment. And it's all this roiling difficulty and negative emotions that have yet to be received and heard in therapy and in other secure relationships. And then you drink, especially in the context of being a little, unsure about where you're at. You feel a little bit of awkwardness and neglect. You want to reach out to Tom. You had all these fantasies and dreams about being swept off your feet, and he'd be in love with you, and he'd be your Prince Charming, and it's not really working out that way. And then all of these past traumas and hurts and pains and being left alone come to the surface. And for the individual, you just feel overwhelmed with emotion. You want to cry. You want to reach out, but you're like, this person doesn't seem to be receiving it very well. I don't know what to do. I'm upset. And because of the intoxication, the normal brain processes that normally would be able to kind of modulate this and figure out a way to distract or whatever are not functioning well enough. And so it just becomes this unbridled emotional space for people. And I wonder if that's what's happening for Darcey right now. Obviously, I have no idea, but there's some evidence of that.
I mean, it's kind of nice to know where we stand a little bit. And
are you really trying to ask me, is this kind of like exclusive?
I feel like when you're with somebody, and whether you have like 2 dates, or dated for months, like, you don't want to waste anybody's time.
So basically we've had 2 dates. Is this the second one?
Oh, this is the second one. But I feel like we've had 4 years of almost like online communicating.
So as with the sleeping in the same bed issue, there's nothing wrong with Darcey wanting to be in an exclusive relationship with Tom. For some of you out there, that might seem normal, and for some of you out there, that might seem weird on the second date. And there's also nothing wrong with Tom saying, I'm not willing to be exclusive with you at this point. To me, this is a second date. That's not really how I roll. Now, it's not a matter of who is going to win the argument or who's going to make the best case, which is typically what people do, and it's what they're doing right now. She's like, we've known each other for 4 years, and he's like, this is our second date. So they're trying to bring up data that will back up their claim for their position, rather than speaking from their feelings and rather than owning their own feelings. For Darcey, she could say something like, yeah, it's our second date, but I feel like I'm influenced by the fact that we've been talking for so long. But all that doesn't matter so much to, in my heart, I really like you, and it would make me feel a lot better if we were in an exclusive relationship. That's my preference. Let's have a conversation about that. And for him to say that it's not like he's, champing at the bit to have sex with a bunch of other people, but he just wants to get to know her better and talk about that at a later time, for a lot of reasons. And there's nothing wrong with having that preference. How do two people take care of each other when they have these differences? That's a key in how to have a functional relationship. There's always going to be these conflicts. And instead of saying, well, he was wrong because we were talking to each other for 4 years, and come on, ladies, agree with me. He's a slut and he's afraid of commitment, which is a common narrative that will come up in a situation like that. Or he goes to his guy friends and she's a psycho. She's just like trying to grab me and trying to control me, trying to make me marry her right away. I mean, who's that? She's crazy. No, those are the narratives that often evolve from this lack of communicating what's really happening and just accepting that, okay, well, that's your preference and this is mine, and how do we take care of each other through that difference?
I had been seeing other women, but I've told them I wouldn't be seeing them anymore. I want to see where this goes with Darcey. I want to see if this love affair and romance, which it could be, becomes something more of a long-term thing.
They've been told a while ago that you were coming. So, problem.
It's like how recently was
5-6 weeks ago, maybe. So.
All right, well, that does it for that installment in which we follow Darcey. Please subscribe, hit the bell below. I might have said that before. And please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.